Unscrupulous boxing promoters, violent bookmakers, a Russian gangster, incompetent amateur robbers, and supposedly Jewish jewelers fight to track down a priceless stolen diamond. What do I know about diamonds? I'm a boxing promoter. This is Snatch. Whoa, welcome into with Smoking Guns. This is a podcast where we jump into some of our favorite films throughout our lifetime and talk about them as we patiently wait for the San Antonio professional football season, which is getting closer and closer all the time, Leo.
Oh, man, yeah.
We may even have some stuff to start talking about here very soon. There's a tryout coming up for the San Antonio Gunslingers on Saturday. There is schedule out for both teams now, the San Antonio Brahmas and the San Antonio Gunslingers. And you guys got to meet and spend some time with the San Antonio Caballeros recently. And so we've got some stuff that's coming up that we can talk about when it comes to San Antonio football. But that's not what we're here to do today. Today, we're here to talk about the 2000 Guy Ritchie heist comedy, dark comedy, I guess. Snatch. Dags. You like Dags?
You like Dags.
This was your pick. I'll be really honest with everybody right off the top. Like, we drafted movies, and this was one that you picked. I had not seen it in probably 20 years. I watched it a lot when I was in my early 20s, and we'll talk about why and how that came about shortly. But I had not seen it since then. But when I picked our last movie, Shawshank Redemption, and I said it was my favorite movie of all time, you replied with Snatch on the draft, and you said, for the same reasons that you just picked Shawshank, I picked Snatch. So I'm really interested as we get into this conversation, now that you've revisited it, done some research and that kind of stuff, if you're still that interested, that on board with Snatch. A little bit about the movie, just to start things off like we always do. Released in 2000, but some of you might be going, no, it was released in 2001. Well, what happened was it was released in 2000 in England.
The UK, yep.
Late in the year, and then it wasn't released in the US until January of 2001. So if you're like, no, that came out in 2001, you're wrong, and that's okay. It's all right to be wrong. It was released in 2000 to its target audience, directed by Guy Ritchie, written by Guy Ritchie, starring Jason Statham, Brad Pitt, Stephen Graham, Vinnie Jones, Benicio del Toro, Dennis Farina, Alan Ford, Robbie G, Lenny James, Rade Serb. Let me get this right. Serb. I did this earlier like 3 or 4 times, and I was able to say his name. Rade Serbgia. He's the guy that you recognize from everything that needed a Russian guy in 2000. From like 1997 to 2002, they needed a Russian guy. They went and got Rade. Mission Impossible 2, The Saint. He's the homeless guy that Bruce Wayne gives his coat to in Batman Begins. He's everywhere in that particular period of time. Like, you know him. You recognize him. He's Boris the Blade in this one. Made on a budget of $6 million. Box office worldwide was $83 million. Its runtime is about 102 minutes. That is the basics for the movie Snatch.
Yep. And to answer your question, yes, Snatch is still holds a dear place in my heart. I mean, great movie. Is it the best movie of all time? I mean, no, I wouldn't say that. But I think there was I don't recall exactly what you said in your message, but there were some things about Shawshank Redemption that you said kind of hit home with you. And I said, for a lot of the same reasons you just said is why Snatch means so much to me. And it's a great movie. It's definitely top 10 in my list. Maybe even top 5 if I had to sit and think about it. But it's a movie that I can watch over and over again and enjoy every single time.
So your audio is a little crackly for me right now, and it's doing weird with speed. That may just be on my end, so I'm not sure. James Palmer and a couple of other people are watching. If you're watching right now and you can comment, if you're hearing Leo the same way I'm hearing him, a little crackly, a little sped up, let us know so that we can make. Yep, James Palmer just said, Leo, you got some crackling going on when you're talking. I don't know if you need to jump out and jump back in or what the case may be to fix that. I know right as we were going live, it kicked you out, so I'm sure that's what's connected.
Let me try
that. It's not a bad movie. Snatch is a good movie. It is a fun movie. It's funny. We just talked about Shawshank, and we've done some really heavy movies over the past few weeks. Leo, how talk to us now.
How are we doing? I'm back now. Is this
much better? All
right.
I was just saying we've done some really heavy movies, Shawshank Redemption, and we've got some. I think we've got some really fun movies on the back end of this thing. I was looking at the list today, and I just feel like we've got a lot of fun set up here. I was noticing how many of our movies, Leo, not surprisingly, you and I selected them, are just guy movies. This is a guy movie. Like this is a movie that will appeal to men and will appeal to men of a certain age. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But so is Tombstone. So is some of the stuff we have lined up on the back end here over as we complete this 10 movie run through some of our favorites. We didn't
pick a lot of girly movies.
Do what?
We didn't pick a lot of girly movies.
We didn't pick any girly movies. Princess Bride, you might be able to convince me is like a girly sort of movie. Other than that, I'm not sure any of these really qualify.
We need more rom-coms for if we have a season 2 of this. We gotta throw in a little bit of rom-coms.
How about all rom-coms? Steel Magnolias, Pretty Woman, My Best Friend's Wedding. I don't know why all 3 of those that popped to mind were Julia Roberts, but those are the ones we do in season 2. So let's talk about our first contact with this film. My first contact, I'll go first. I worked at Blockbuster starting in 2001, actually in January of 2001. I worked at Blockbuster for about 3 or 4 years on and off. It's where I met my wife, the whole thing. And when this movie came out, I don't remember if we went and saw it in theaters, but I remember when it came out, the first opportunity I had to purchase it on DVD. In fact, I might have pre-ordered this from the store, and we sat down. The Notebook, yes, James Palmer is requesting The Notebook. And I had an apartment at the time with some guy that worked in the same building as me, and we both needed to get an apartment nearby. And we both loved this movie. And it ran, I don't want to say it ran continuously, but there definitely wasn't a 3-day period there for like a year that this movie wasn't on the DVD player at some point. We watched it all the time. I know how much I watched it because when I went through to watch it this time, after 20 years away from it, there were lines I still knew before they happened. I was quoting some of the stuff before it ever even happened. So I knew this movie more the front end than the back end. It seems like the front end is a little more fun to me. There's a moment in the movie, and I might say this because we might talk about it, but there's a moment in the movie where everything gets really, really serious. And from that point on, it just, I don't know, it resolves and it works, but it's just not as fun anymore as it was up till that point.
Yeah, there's less comedic. I think I know the moment you're talking about when it kind of changes, and it goes from less comedy to more of the twist in the movie, and the whole revenge.
Yeah, it's the fire.
Vengeance.
I mean,
yes,
yeah, it's the fire. When we actually have actual consequences. I mean, we've had people die already in the movie, but even that has been played in some way with comic effect. Whereas this is a relatively innocent person that has just been, murdered, and all of a sudden something in the movie clicks into place that has not been there previously, and it is all of a sudden very real.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
How about you?
So
your first contact with this film?
I did see it in the theaters. I saw it with a couple of friends, a couple of buddies. One of my friends, I'm trying to remember who it was, but had actually seen Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. And so, and knew that this was the follow-up, not a sequel, but the follow-up movie for Guy Ritchie, and said, you really want to see this movie? If it's anything like his last one, it's going to be pretty cool. And so I had not seen Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels until after I watched Snatch. Then I had to go back and find that movie. But we did see it at the theater. It was with a group of friends, and just like you, quoting the movie. I mean, this is one of the more quotable movies to me in my life. We quoted it at work all the time. You like Dags? It's for me, ma. Things like that, just out of the blue for no reason. It's a fair deal. Take it. Stuff. Just we just had a good time. Booby, I probably know a lot.
I probably know a lot of things that you don't know. Benicio del Toro.
Yes.
What an incredible, he's only in the first 12 minutes of this movie or so.
As a conscious character, yes. And then he's unconscious the rest of the time or dead.
And just still incredible. There's some incredible moments with him. Jason Statham, who is not a guy at this point. He's done Lock, Stock, he does Snatch, but he is not who we think of now, this action hero star of movies is not who he is. He's just not that guy. He is a British actor that is just kind of starting to make his way up and owes his entire career to Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie cast him in Lock, Stock, and then cast him as the lead here in Snatch. And without that, I don't know that we would have ever heard of Jason Statham.
Yeah, I would agree. He owes his career to Guy Ritchie. He's done a lot of great things since. Snatch is what made me a fan of his, and I've watched a lot of his films, and it all goes back to Snatch. Definitely a favorite of mine from the get-go. Like you talked about Blockbuster. As soon as it became available on DVD, I had to buy it. And then when it became available on Blu-ray, and I had my PlayStation, and there was Blu-ray capable, I had to go buy it again on Blu-ray. Now physical media isn't as big as it used to be, so it's all streaming. But I remember, and that's one thing I was looking for online, because I remember seeing some kind of special collector's box or something and I couldn't find it anywhere online. But I remember running across it, and I was so tempted to buy it, and I showed it to Dolores. I showed it to my wife, and I was like, oh, look, this is so cool. And it had something to do with the squeaky toy. It was I don't remember if it had the squeaky toy with the packaging or just on the cover, but I remember seeing it, and I wanted to buy it so bad, but it didn't seem like it. I since I already owned it twice over, buying a third version of it just didn't seem like a wise choice.
So James Palmer talks about working at Blockbuster was definitely awesome to grab movies before they came out. I will tell you that this movie was one of the despised movies for a lot of Blockbuster workers. And the reason is we had a huge issue with theft in the stores. Because of that, in your rental copy, you will remember this if you rented movies from Blockbuster, DVDs from Blockbuster. We used to have to take these stickers that were the size of the DVD and they had metal strips running in them so that would set off the metal detector.
Yeah.
And you had to place those over the disc. Well, for most movies, that means one disc. But when this came out, it came out in a box set that had the widescreen and full screen edition in a double set. And when we rented out the double set. And so that meant you had to do 2 discs for every one of these copies. And it was a huge movie when it came out, when it came into the store. And so you get 80 copies or 125 copies. And instead of doing the sticker 125 times, you had to do it 250 times.
250. Nice.
And the case was a little thicker, so you couldn't put 5 of them behind a box. You could only put 3 of them behind a box. It was one that we did not like as much. As much as I like the movie, we did not like the way it was packaged so much. So let's talk a little bit about what makes this film great. And the first thing I have written down, you already started in on. It's quotable. It is one of the most quotable movies that you will ever see. And a lot of that comes down to Jason Statham, who is your narrator and the main character of the show, and just pitch perfect as far as that sarcastic, level-headed protagonist that you need for this kind of show, this kind of movie, this kind of heist movie. But he's super sarcastic. I love his interplay with Tommy. Who are you protecting yourself from? The Germans?
The Germans?
I
love it.
When he's going to buy the new, he tells Tommy to go buy him a new caravan, and he goes to get in to the one that they're at, and he's like, "What's wrong with this one?" And he pulls the door off the hinges, and he goes, "Nothing, Tommy. It's tipped up. I just don't like the color." So it is. It's very quotable. And then, Brad Pitt, for the character that he's playing, is still very, very fun and very quotable.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Very quotable for Jason Statham. I love that interaction between him and his sidekick, Tommy. An interesting story on how what's his name got that role too. We'll talk about later, I'm sure.
I read this.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
Stephen Graham.
By complete accident, right? So yeah, this movie, we have our section where we talk about how things could have been different. There's a few things on this one that we definitely need to hit on. But I mean, what makes this movie
stuff, because I've only got one. So.
Oh, I've got a couple. So this movie for me was so great because of the quotability, but because of the time, at least for me, seeing this movie, and I kind of talked to you about this a little offline and why it's so hit home so much and has been kind of so memorable, besides the fact that I saw it with friends, coworkers, we talked a lot about it at work. The quotability of it made it fun in our everyday work lives. 2 minutes Turkish, like when are you gonna get done building a server? 2 minutes Turkish, like,
yeah. I was coming on those sausages. 5 minutes Turkish. It was 2 minutes 5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago, yeah. So yeah, that just meant like I have no idea. I'm just giving you an answer. Just that time in my life, being at that time, I'm like 24 years old. I'm married. I've already got kids. My life was, I was, took the responsibility that a young father should take, and a lot, unfortunately, don't. And my life was going a certain way with a lot of effort and a lot of I was far from perfect guy. I had to remind myself of a lot of things to kind of get myself back in line, or, Loli also would get me back in line real quick too. But yeah, but it was at that time, where you're just like a young guy, you're 24 years old, and my life could have gone so differently. And you kind of feel at that age, you're strong, you're young, like and you're not quite, you don't quite have things figured out, or at least I didn't at that point, but I was trying, I was working at it. But it was like the ultimate fantasy, because you kind of had that urge to just get a little dirty sometimes, and you know, you felt strong, like you could take on something bigger than yourself, and you could prove
Sure.
yourself to others. And there's that element of the little guy getting picked on by, Bricktop, who's a fantastic antagonist in this movie. And you have, everybody worried about Bricktop and being in his pocket, and he's pushing people around and respected and feared by everyone. But you have this group of people that are, resilient, and then you have the pikey group, and Brad Pitt, you have Mickey, who comes in and just tears it all down, and unexpectedly, just Bricktop doesn't know what's hit him until it happens, like all the way to the end. There's just no idea of what's happening. And you have this kind of youthful, like, I could do something with, I could take on the world kind of attitude or mentality. And you kind of see this, and it's just it's edgy, it's grimy, but there's a whole lot to like about it, and that you can relate to as a young man. I mean, the whole boxing and fighting, and
Sure.
I don't know,
Sure.
a little bit of machismo, I guess, but you get
Definitely.
that. And it was just cool. It was cool to see that, and kind of have so much fun with it. Yeah, it was just like the perfect fantasy for a young man at the time.
Brad Pitt, you mentioned him. Brad Pitt is amazing. Brad
Yes.
Pitt probably made this movie what it was, in that I don't think it has a large American release without Brad Pitt in it. I
Nope.
think simply the fact that he's in it caused it to have a large US release.
Mm-hmm.
He is incredible as Mickey, and Mickey is the same guy in every situation. Every time, he is underestimated and is going to finish things before you realize it even started.
Mm-hmm.
He does that time and time again in the movie. He is underestimated, and then he just lays out Gorgeous George, and you don't even realize the fight has truly begun, and it's over. And he does that over and over and over again, leading all the way up to the final moment, when or the climax, when he and his group of folks, his group of pikeys, take down Bricktop, this menacing person that has been throughout the movie, and is just swept away.
Mm-hmm.
It is the same. It's almost a three beat. He does it with Gorgeous George. He does it again in the ring for the first time. And then he
Mm-hmm.
does it to Bricktop. It's almost this rule of threes, where you underestimate him and you do so to your peril. And each one of those have done that,
Mm-hmm.
as we've moved through. But Brad Pitt, this, in a slightly different world, Leo, this could have been our third Brad Pitt movie in a row. We did 7 2 movies ago. Brad Pitt was supposed to be Tommy in Shawshank Redemption and backed out because his career was taking off. And then now, of course, Snatch from 2000 could have been our third Brad Pitt movie in a row. I think it's fair to say, whether we want to admit it or not, Brad Pitt's a pretty good actor. Brad Pitt's pretty good at this thing. Which for a long time I did not want to admit, because I was like, it's no fair. You can't look like that and be talented. You need to do one or the other. Save something for the rest of us. It's not fair that you get to be good looking and talented. Not fair.
Yeah, totally. I mean, between this and the year before, 2 years before, with the Fight Club.
Fight Club. Yeah.
I think this was, I mean, he'd done some things, but I think he got a lot more work after these two performances that kind of really showed. And he was worried about that. He was worried about taking this role because he had just done Fight Club, and he's like, oh, I'm doing another fighting character. But he did it anyways because he respected Guy Ritchie. So he was a big fan of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. He actually reached out to Guy Ritchie and said, do you have a role for me in your next project? Because I want to be in it. And that's how Mickey came to be. Actually, Mickey wasn't in the original script at all.
You're gonna burn through my only thing I have and how it could have been different. But you're right.
Yeah, we'll hold on to that. But yeah.
Brad Pitt, just amazing, and doesn't have a ton of screen time, but he drives the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of guys that kind of drive this movie through, even though they don't have a lot of screen time. Statham is the one that carries us all the way through the movie because he's your narrator, he's your protagonist, he's kind of your audience stand-in. But Pitt and Dennis Farina are kind of guys that drive this movie. And I'll have some things to say about Dennis Farina in a minute. I do want to stop down on Bricktop, Alan Ford's Bricktop. I've seen a lot of villains in a lot of movies. I don't know. The thing that was impressed on me this time, this watch through, and I watched it about 3 times over the past 2 weeks, was how menacing Alan Ford plays Bricktop. He is legitimately a scary person almost from the moment he steps on the screen. And certainly in some moments that you're almost so uncomfortable that you need some sort of release, you need to laugh. His conversation or monologue really about disposing of bodies. Yes, when he comes in, steps over the body of Frankie Four Fingers, sits down on the couch and tells them the math and how all of this works and how you dispose of a body, and then leads them back to a room that is covered in plastic. Like, just some of the most menacing moments of any character in any movie I've ever seen. Incredibly well done. Incredible portrayal of a villain. If I were to ever direct a movie that had a serious, really serious villain in it, I would set the actor down and have them watch Alan Ford and what he's doing here with Bricktop. Because everybody else in this movie is funny. Like, everybody else is funny. You laugh at them a little bit. Even Bullet to Tony, which is this big, crazy, scary guy. He's funny.
Yeah.
Alan Ford is not funny. Even when he cracks a joke, it's not funny. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's off-putting.
He plays the rich mob boss guy, London mob boss guy to perfection, that just doesn't care at all about anybody else but himself. And he's definitely a scary guy. He does have some humorous moments. One of my favorite lines is you could keep the silly fat wanker, the lads can't lift him.
Right.
And that room of plastic that you're talking about.
Yeah. When he's got Tyrone already in the body bag as he's walking these guys in. Like, no doubt of what's about to happen here, because one dude is already, he's alive still, but he's already in the body bag.
Yeah, it's definitely a very serious character that you don't want to mess with. As Turkish says, that's the last place you want to be, is in his pocket. He does it very well, and he's apparently Alan Ford is like the exact opposite. He's a vegetarian and an animal lover, and he's got to play this mean guy that doesn't care about certainly doesn't care about animals. The scene where he's poking the dog for the dog
Right.
fight. The dog fight scene is particularly disturbing. And then that whole speech about
On
the
purpose.
pigs. Mm-hmm.
The dogfighting scene is put in by Guy Ritchie when he watches another movie that has a dogfighting scene and makes him so uncomfortable that he writes it in for Bricktop to make you, the audience, understand what he wants you to understand about who Bricktop is. Very well done. Like, you know, I've got some. I'm going to bag on Guy Ritchie here in a little bit, but very, very good. With that, we lost Leo again. Let's see if we get crackly Leo back or if we get normal Leo back. That's very weird that he popped off again. Yeah, I read the same thing about Alan Ford. He was absolutely just a wonderful guy to work with and was a vegetarian and an animal lover. So it's very interesting that he played that particular part. And would agree to that particular part. I love actors who recognize that I'm acting. This is not who I am. This is not what I do. I was just thinking about Sam Elliott today, as a matter of fact. And Sam Elliott recently has played some very conservative politically and very liberal politically characters recently. And it came out during the election that he is actually fairly liberal. I believe, and that was a surprise to me because Sam Elliott, you think of with the big mustache and the deep voice as the cowboy guy, and that's not what I expected from him. But I was like, I love that he plays both of these sides with the same gusto, and he is so believable. In let's say Parks and Rec, where he is this liberal yoga instructor, granola eating kind of guy, and he's very funny in that. And then you go around and watch The Ranch, where he is very conservative, and that he does both with such gusto. And Alan Ford, again, not who he is. And
no,
I think if I read right, Leo, you might have seen the same thing. He kind of started getting typecast as the gangster boss based
he
on
did it so
this
well.
particular portrayal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, he was fantastic. And so you have those big three characters. You have Jason Statham, Turkish. You have Alan Ford as Bricktop. You have Brad Pitt as Mickey. But what to me puts this movie over the top as a classic is, besides the main characters, the bit characters, the guys, the people with the smaller parts do a fantastic job of what their character is supposed to be in this movie and portraying it and being funny about it, right down to one of the more memorable characters for me from this movie. Well, Tyrone, I want to say my favorite movie from this character, it's got to be Tyrone. I love Tyrone. I just I love Tyrone. I've always been a big guy, and I can relate to some of the things of that, and especially nowadays, the struggling to get out of the car. And it's like,
keep that
told
dog
me he was
from
a
dribbling
getaway.
on my seats.
Yeah. Tell me, what the can he get away from?
Right.
And just I love Aid, I guess is how you pronounce his name, and his portrayal of Tyrone. He's just so kind of dumb and funny. But one of my favorite characters that's a tiny little character is Becca Murray, who plays the girl that's at the counter of the bookies.
She's incredible. She is absolutely. She has about 5 lines.
Yes.
And she is absolutely, when she looks up with the gun stuck in her face and she goes, "Do you know whose bookie this is? You're robbing." Yeah. Yeah. No, all bets are off. No.
Yeah. That whole scene is just
incredible.
Amazing.
Incredible.
And that scene is based off of actual, not the same event, but Guy Ritchie took bits and pieces of actual crimes. Those late night shows where they stupid criminals,
stupidest criminals.
Yeah.
And put them all together into Tyrone, Vinny, and Soul. Like that's what they are. They are the Keystone Cops of this particular movie. They are a lot of the humor, all the way through the end. Even at the end, when they are standing by the police car, being arrested, and look through the window to see Tommy holding the dog, and they know this dog has the diamond. Or the piece of paste that looks like a diamond. Not a real convincing diamond. I'm not going to lie. Not a very convincing diamond for me. Props man needed to work on that diamond a little more. I want to talk briefly about, you're right, there's a lot of little bit people through this movie. I love the pawnbroker. I love the twin daughters, Doug's daughters.
Yeah.
Are incredible. They only have one extended scene of dialogue, and in that scene of dialogue, they share the same line through the whole thing, and it's hilarious. I know.
We know, Dad.
We know. You told us, Dad. Incredible. I want to talk about Vinnie Jones. What happened to that guy? He was everywhere. For like 3 or 4 years, we saw him. He was in Lock, Stock. He was in Snatch. He showed up in Gone in 60 Seconds. He was this very specific, enforcer sort of character. And then I don't know. We just didn't need that anymore. I can't remember seeing him past about 2006.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the rough life caught up to him because from what I was reading, Bullet Tooth Tony is not a far cry from who he is in real life. There's a bit about that the scene where Vinny and Saul are sitting in the car getting ready to take the diamond into Bricktop, and Bullet Tooth Tony walks up and taps the window with his Desert Eagle. That's not actually Vinny. That is a lookalike because Vinnie Jones was in jail for getting into a bar fight the night before and didn't show up to the set.
All right.
So maybe some of that caught up with him and he just needed to lay low. I don't know.
X-Men Last Stand, he was the Juggernaut. That is really the last thing of note that I see on his list. So but he does a great job. I want to talk briefly about Dennis Farina. Not so much for him in this movie, although I think that he is great in this movie. I think it's very odd to take a Chicago guy that is just Chicago through and through and turn him into a New York Jewish mobster. It's a very weird decision. He is the only American in the entire movie. The only American playing an American, because obviously Brad Pitt's American as well. But Dennis Farina is playing Avi, and just having so much fun with it. I don't know if he's doing a great job, but he's having so much fun with it. And Dennis Farina, I find, Leo, fascinating. This guy was a Chicago. He was a what did he do before that? He was a Chicago detective. Decided he wanted to be an actor, so he starts doing some acting in Chicago. Winds up working with Michael Mann. Michael Mann's the famous film director. He directed Ali and Heat, and what else has he directed? Manhunter and Miami Vice. Well, he did the Miami Vice TV show, and he brings in Dennis Farina as his police consultant because he had been a Chicago detective for years. And he ends up putting Dennis Farina in as one of these mob bosses in the early seasons of Miami Vice. And from there, Dennis Farina takes off into this really weird career where he plays two things. He plays cops or mob bosses.
Or mobsters.
Like over and over and over again. He is the mob boss in what's the movie with Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro? Midnight Run. He's the mob boss in that. He just plays those characters over and over again, all because he developed a relationship with Michael Mann at just the right time, and people liked his. He also did one romantic comedy with Bette Midler. Figure that out, but
I haven't seen that one.
No, I haven't either. I know it exists, but I haven't seen it. I am fascinated by this guy who, he did Get Shorty and that classic sort of trademark mustache and that very thick Chicago sort of accent that he has, and just where he came from and how he wound up being a star in Hollywood, a guy whose name I know, whose name a lot of people know, when he was just like, he spent 18 years as a Chicago police officer, worked his way from patrolman all the way up to detective. He had a full career as a police officer and then had a full career as a Hollywood B-list actor. I just find that very fascinating. I think that's very interesting. And he shows up in this movie in a role that I think doesn't make sense for him. I mean, the mob boss thing, like I get, he's kind of stereotyped as that, but he's this deep, thick Chicago accent, and he's playing this pretend. Maybe that's the joke, is he's pretending to be Jewish. New York, gangster.
So he plays the role well, but the accent is off, but Guy Ritchie doesn't care about accents. In fact, a big part of this movie was him taking a jab back at his critics, because that was one of the biggest criticisms of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. People complained about the accents being off. And the accent also has a lot to do with Brad Pitt's role and the whole Mickey character in this movie, which we'll talk again about in a little bit. So I don't think Guy Ritchie really put a lot of weight on, can you do this accent or not? More so he cares about, can you execute this character within the story and make it flow and do it well and make it funny.
I do love how quickly Avi, which is Dennis Farina, and Bullet Tooth Tony, which is Vinnie Jones, how quickly they become
mesh
partners. Yeah. I mean, they just kind of take to each other immediately, and they get along so well. I love the moment in the car where he's got the guy's head in the window, and he's like, "It's effective, not very subtle, but it's effective."
Not very subtle, but effective. I mean, Bullet Tooth Tony is exactly what Avi needs to get what he wants in the short period of time he's planning on being in London. So until he's not there anymore.
Yeah, he has one of the best he has a lot of great, Dennis Farina has a lot of great line deliveries.
Yes.
Most of which I can't repeat because he loves the F word. But when he's standing at customs, and they say anything to declare it, he goes, don't go to London.
Don't go to London.
Makes me crack up every time, and I know it's coming. What else is great about you got anything else in your what is great about this movie sort of bucket?
I mean, the main thing is the characters, all the bit characters, the comedy. I think it's a really good mix of being a gritty, grimy kind of underground crime movie. I think Ritchie uses the set to portray that very well. There's a lot of really grimy, dirty, like kind of makes you feel like you're definitely, someplace where you don't want to be through a lot of this movie, just in the sets. but the characters kind of lighten things up with the dialogue, and it's
They
very
do.
well placed comedy throughout. And there's a lot of play on that, and then camera work, some that works really well, and some that I know that you're not very fond of. But
it does a great job riffing on Quentin Tarantino to me. There's a lot of Reservoir Dogs. There's a lot of Pulp Fiction in here. It kind of felt like Guy Ritchie said, I want to do my version of that, which is great. Like Pulp Fiction was a seminal film in film history. It changed a lot of things. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that a director over in London would go, that looks like a lot of fun. I want to try to do my version of that. And I think that's what he did, and that's okay. That's fine. He doesn't do it as well as Tarantino did to me, but that's not here nor there. Like everybody has their own version of something, and this is his version of that. Okay, so let's talk about the things that maybe we didn't love, or the things that we would change. I have a list, and first, let me say Guy Ritchie has more money than me. He's made more movies than me. He's written more movies than me, and he does spectacular work. And he was married to Madonna at one point in his life. Like there's lots of things that Guy Ritchie has over me. But I didn't care for his presentation of this particular film. This film is filmed and edited in such a way that it kept certain things that they do throughout the movie kept bringing me out of the movie. One of those, and we've already talked some about this offline, but one of those is a very obvious nod toward what was popular at the time, a music video style of filming and editing movies. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it didn't look cool. It looks cool. There is a moment where Avi and Doug are having a phone conversation, and it's in a split screen. And as they're talking, the screen is moving, like it's becoming larger based on who's talking, and it's kind of sweeping in and out. It looks awesome. I have no idea what they were talking about in that phone conversation. Like I couldn't keep track of it because I kept going, wow, that looks really cool. That looks great. But it took me out of the movie because I'm paying attention to what it looks like instead of what's actually happening in front of me. He messes around a lot with time. This is really noticeable when you try to track the gun. There's a gun through the first half of the movie that if you keep track of, is in almost everybody's hands at some point. It is the gun that they talk about throughout the movie. And I have trouble tracking it. And like, why does that person have it right now? I thought this person had and it's because he's using this Pulp Fiction sort of time is not what you think it is. And he's scrambling the time line up a little bit on you, but it's very hard to follow for me. And it takes me out of the movie again.
I honestly don't know what you're talking about with the gun. Like, that's not something that ever registered to me. I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about Tommy's gun, the one that Boris the Blade sold him. That's too heavy, but weight is good because if it doesn't work, you can hit him on the head with it. But I didn't even realize that gun changes hands or goes,
So that gun starts with Freddy Four Fingers. He actually robs he gets the diamond in the first heist with that gun. Mm-hmm. It goes from him to the guy he hands it to. He empties it out, hands it to a guy. The guy says, if you want it, when you get to London, ask for Boris the Blade, you can get your gun back. He goes back and gets his gun back. Or a gun, just like it. But if it's going to be a gun just like it, you need to make it different for me because now I'm confused because Boris sold it to Tommy or gave it to Tommy or whatever. And then I believe that same gun is the one. So anyway, I think it winds up back in Boris's hands at one point. It gets very confusing to try to follow this gun And it's because time is moving around. It's not linear through this, which I'm fine with. I'm okay with non-linear, but you got to do a better job of helping me keep track of where we are if you're doing that, because you're pulling me out of the movie every time this gun shows up in Frankie's hand. I'm going, he shouldn't have that gun. He gave that gun to this guy, but then he went back to Boris and got it back. Oh yes, I remember that now. It's very hard to keep track of. The third thing that Guy Ritchie does in this movie that drove me absolutely insane, it was probably the thing that upset me more than anything else, is he uses Dutch angle. And that's something I'm familiar with because I love film. And I mentioned it to you earlier and you were like, I'm not sure what that means. So maybe I should clarify in case somebody else doesn't know. Dutch angle is when they just tilt the camera. It's legitimately just tilting the camera a few degrees, and it sets everything on a weird axis. It makes you feel uncomfortable because everything is twisted, is turned, is not normal. And so you get an uneasy feeling. They use it a lot in thrillers and horror movies. It's a very popular technique for those when they want you to feel like something is about to happen. A lot of times it'll be used with a music cue that's low but building. It's a very popular film technique. Mm-hmm. And it's great for communicating something. Guy Ritchie uses it on about every third shot in this movie.
Yeah.
And when you use it that much, I no longer understand what you're trying to communicate to me. It again takes me out of the movie. I begin to joke, like, what happened? Did one of their tripods just have the leg wouldn't extend all the way and they just had the camera set off to the side? He uses it so much and at seemingly random moments that it just pulled me out of the film a lot. And again, this was something that was popular at the time, but it does not, I don't know, just does not translate well. I enjoyed this movie. I'm not trying to bag on Guy Ritchie or this movie. I really enjoyed the movie. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. That's what it's all about. Like there's no deep theme in this movie. There's no this is just fun. We're just having fun here. And I get that. I understand that. But I think he was getting a little, sometimes you just get a little too cute for your own good. You just want to make things look a little too slick, a little too shiny. And I think that's what it felt like here, is he's trying to be cool. He's trying to make it look cool. Contrast that with Tarantino. Tarantino does this stuff all the time too. But in Tarantino's seminal work, Pulp Fiction, while he does some of these kind of things, the square, which is it just pops up out of nowhere and you don't really understand. That's the only time he does that effect. And then he leaves it alone. So it means something. It's memorable. It pops out and it means something. To me, Guy Ritchie was not doing that. He's just like, this will look cool. Yeah, it does. But what does it mean? Like, what are you trying to tell me, show me, do with this? I agree. It looks cool. I need more than that. And so that really took me out of the film in a lot of places.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead.
The other issue I really had, and I already kind of alluded to it a second ago, is the tonal shift at the fire. There is this very jarring sort of tonal shift in that moment where Mickey's mother's caravan is on fire with Mickey's mother in it, and he's fighting to try to get to her, and they're holding him back and all of that. And we linger on it for a long time. We spend a lot of time in that.
There's rage.
And then, and it's important. I completely understand. It is important to the back 20 minutes of the movie. You do not understand that without having this moment. But the tone in that moment is so serious. And then we try to go back to the same movie we were in within minutes. We're cracking jokes and we're having fun. I think the thing that shifts. I mean, there's a scene where they're at the fire. There's a scene just after the fire where Mickey is talking to Turkish and Tommy,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to say we shift right into Turkish and Tommy in their own caravan talking about what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what they're going to do if Mickey doesn't take a dive.
Mm-hmm.
And they're cracking jokes. You know, I mean, Statham in his own way is talking about, well, I assume we'll be killed before we leave the building and be fed to the pigs. And he says that like 2 or 3 times in a row, and it's for comedic effect. You can't do that and then expect me to laugh at the guys playing cards with naked girls on it and joking about getting killed. I get it that it's a dark comedy, and I understand that, but you can't shift the tone so jarringly and then expect me to jump right back into the movie. To me, it throws off the rest of the movie, because now we've stepped into a much more serious world. And if you want that tone to continue, I'm okay with that. If you want this light sort of, yes, it's a dark comedy and we're going to have a light tone, there are other ways that you can accomplish this moment without lingering on it and it feeling so heavy. It's just such a heavy moment. And I don't feel like the payoff is there. It exists. I don't feel like it matches. I just feel like this is this very weird tonal shift quickly in the movie and then tries to shift back. And it's very much like, I keep using the word shift. It's like throwing your transmission into neutral, you know, out of third gear and then trying to go back into third gear. It doesn't work for me. It's a lot. It's a big shift all of a sudden, and then he tries to go right back.
I could see that. You said the thing that kind of, my retort to that would be, you said it's a different world, and I think we're glimpsing into 2 different worlds altogether. Turkish and Tommy's world is way different from that of the gypsies and the pikeys. You know, Turkish kind of alludes to it, talking about a wake, and then he's like describing what a pikey, wake is like. You know, the funeral, and then we get some views of that, and that is one of the. It's very serious, and I think Brad Pitt plays those scenes very well, where he's just showing rage and despair at the same time very, very well. It's a very striking scene of, them being, him being drunk, to kind of hurt himself and his friends and buddies all around him. And it's kind of a celebration of his mom's life and then a grievance at the same time. And it was a striking contrast. And I see how that could bother you, but it didn't bother me as much. But one of the things that I would change about this movie is definitely related to what you're talking about in the contrast in the tones. If I would change anything, although I really like the movie the way it is, but if there's something that I say, it might be better if the final twist, and when the vengeance plot is revealed, it seems, and I think they do it. I think it's done because it's quick. It's supposed to be quick. It's quick and unexpected. But I almost feel like seeing that wake and seeing the burning caravan and the scenes you've just talked about, we want to see the pikey vengeance. We want to see more of that. We want to see more detail. We want to see something that matches that emotion. at the end as a response, because the response obviously was drastic, but it was quick. And I think it was quick intentionally because they were gone the next day. And that's just kind of the way the gypsies do things. You don't know when they're going to move on, and they're experts at packing up and going on. So their revenge in turn has to be quick, unexpected, and you blink and they're gone. So I get that, but I think you're right in the sense where you see such contrast between one side and the next, and then you get the whole bloody fight scene and the final scene and what happens with Mickey's revenge. But you see more of the fight and what he goes through to get to that point than the actual revenge. The revenge is quick, it's instantaneous. You see the guys in the van and ready to shoot all the pikeys if things don't go as planned at the fight. And they're sitting in there and they're like, oh, I freaking hate pikeys. They're nervous and stuff, but you don't see a whole lot of how they're handled. I mean, you get to see them at the end blasting through the sides of the vans and the ambush there, and the whole plot, or not plot, but the whole plan that as it's unraveling, and you're going, oh man, okay. But it's very, very quick by design, but it kind of leaves that desire of that unevenness that I think you were feeling. Yeah. I could see that.
I love the word uneven, because that's what I feel. And I think there's a way to do it. Like, I think you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish storytelling wise without it's so long. Like, if we just get the reflection of the flame on Mickey as he's trying to wrestle through two guys, and then Turkish getting a phone call and say, and I mean, it's that quick. It's 5 seconds of that, 7 seconds of that. And then Turkish gets a phone call and they're standing outside the burned out caravan and having the conversation. You accomplish the same thing without such a grinding gears sort of uneven, moment to me. It just, I understand what you're trying to do. It just didn't work on me. I thought it was too much, and it's very hard to go right back into what we were doing before. And I don't think we ever get there. Like, it's dissident from that point on. Although the ending is great. The freeze frame of Statham, Stephen Graham, and Brad Pitt when Bricktop knocks on the window and asks for the gun. You don't get anything what happens to Bricktop. You get a freeze frame of those three guys as they watch what happens. Is just an incredible moment, because you can read on Mickey's face. I don't need dialogue. I don't need to hear what he's saying. I don't need to hear what he's thinking. I can see on his face he's thinking, that's what you get. That's what you get. And it's great. Like, Brad Pitt is great. He's great at this thing. And he does a wonderful job. And Guy Ritchie pulled the perfect freeze frame out of that frame.
Yeah. Agreed.
So now we get to talk about how it could have been different. And we've kind of alluded to this a couple of times. Apparently, and I don't know what it looked like, and maybe you do, maybe you can give me some more insight. But apparently, Brad Pitt reached out, you mentioned earlier, to Guy Ritchie after seeing Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and said, I want a part. Give me a part in your next film. Something. I don't care what it is. I want it. Well, you don't tell Brad Pitt in 2000, in 1999 and 2000, no. If he wants to be in your movie, you find a place for him in your movie. But there's a problem. Brad Pitt can't learn, by his own admission, apparently, a convincing London accent.
Right.
So Guy Ritchie converts the character of Mickey into this pikey character that we now have and we know and we love. My question, Leo, is what did this look like before? Because that's such a big part of what this is.
You'd have to ask Guy Ritchie. We'll never know because I can't imagine this movie without Mickey in it and without that whole vengeance plot. There's got to be, I don't know where the plot twist comes, the revenge, what happens to Bricktop, because when Brad Pitt reaches out to Guy Ritchie and Guy Ritchie says, "Oh yeah, sure, I've got a part for you." They said immediately when he hung up the phone, he realized he didn't. So he had to rewrite the script and create. I don't know. Maybe this is one of the only times in movie history that the sequence of events is like this, where an actor calls a director writer and says, "Hey, I want to be in your movie," and he immediately rewrites the whole thing just to put him in it. I don't know if that, obviously that's not going to be a common thing. So the entire character of Mickey was because Brad Pitt wanted something in that movie. And before he did that, he considered Brad Pitt for Turkish. And I'm grateful that Brad Pitt is terrible at accents, because I can't imagine what this movie would have been like with Brad Pitt as Turkish and no Mickey in it. Like, I don't know what this movie looks like at all. It changes everything about it.
And Mickey being this pikey gypsy sort of, it is so intertwined into the very plot of the movie. Like, there are things that cannot happen in this movie the way they happen without that aspect of this character. So when I read that he converted the character of Mickey into a gypsy, I went, wait, that doesn't make sense. He was just a London street rat? I don't understand. I don't understand, because it's such a big part from what he wants as payment for doing the fights, the fact that they move around and move away and move, the dog and the dogs as they play a role in it. Like, so much is tied into that identity of those characters, those people in this movie, that I feel like he had to do a complete rewrite
almost, right,
to get to this,
like I feel like originally maybe it had something to do with some Irish gang or some Irish people, because when he talked to him about the whole gypsy and the being Irish, Brad Pitt was like, "Well, I don't do a very good Irish accent either," and he's like, "Well, it doesn't matter, because this particular dialect, the pikey dialect, not only is your accent going to be, not important, but you're not even going to be able to be discernible to people in the movie, because that was by design, that the pikeys talk like this, and intentionally." And that was kind of genius, intentionally talk like that so that they can negotiate deals with people not having any idea what they've just agreed to, which is pretty genius and funny. But yeah, it makes you wonder, what did Guy Ritchie have beforehand, before Brad Pitt made that phone call to him? Something totally different had to be.
By the way, I should have mentioned it before. I bagged on the editing and the filming and the music video sort of style they use. There's one point where I think it works really, really, really well, and that is where they are watching the dogs chase the rabbit, and it is intercut with Tyrone and Bricktop's goons coming after him. Just very well done. Very, very well done. Cut together. And it is very much that music video sort of style of telling story, but it's done really, really well there. I really liked that.
Yeah, very much agree with that. And then, like, the soundtrack just overall is excellently done. It's really good. It goes with the movie very well. It goes with the scenes, with each song that was selected, and it just keeps it moving, and it's interesting. The music is all interesting and very fresh, at least at the time. And even now, you listen to some of that and you're like, man, that's a cool song. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with that. Scene is fantastic. The chase.
But if you're going to talk about music, we need to talk briefly about Lucky Star, which shows up at two different places in the movie. And I love that Guy Ritchie had a different music cue for that particular moment. The most notable moment is when they're riding in the car, guy's head in the window, they turn on the radio. Avi does, and Bullet Tooth Tony says, Lucky Star, I love that song.
Oh, I love this track.
Apparently he had another track, he had another song all lined out to use, but it was going to be really, really expensive. And so instead he talked to his girlfriend, who became his wife later, and then they got a divorce, Madonna, and she said, let's use one of mine. And so they used Lucky Star there. And later, after the divorce, he would say, definitely cost me more to use
cost
that
me
song.
A lot more. Yeah.
It would have to use the song I originally wanted to use.
Yeah, that's great.
How else might it have been different? Do you have more?
Yeah, I do. So the original actor that Ritchie wanted for Bricktop,
okay,
Sean Connery.
Oh, I did read this. You're right. Thank you for bringing this up.
And Sean Connery considered it. He had heard a lot of good things about Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, but had not seen it yet. And said, I'll consider it, but I want to have a screening of your last movie. And so they made arrangements for a last minute screening that Sean Connery came over to and watched the movie. And very famously now for Snatch fans, during the screening, or some say it was during the screening, and others say it was after. So who knows?
I read it was after, but go ahead. Yeah.
It wasn't Ritchie, it was the other guy. Oh, what's his name? It's the guy that did Layer Cake, I think. Yeah, Matthew Vaughn. And he tells Matthew Vaughn, he says, I like the movie. I think it's a good script, but you can't afford me.
You can't afford me.
You can't afford me.
Sean Connery, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
That is Sean Connery for you. I like
how
it.
He came.
I like the script. It looks great, and you guys are going to have a great time. You got to be kidding me. I'm not going to be in that. I'm Sean Connery. Are you kidding me?
You know what, though? He was right. From everything that I've read about the filming of this movie and how low budget it was, Sean Connery would have been absolutely miserable and maybe would have walked off the set. I don't think he would have fit in well.
Well, Sean Connery famously was not real easy to work with.
Yeah.
He was very old, sort of movie making, and he was a star, and he knew it. And I love Sean Connery, but yeah, I don't think it would have gone over very well. At that point in his career,
right? Yep.
There was a time where he did some crazy, weird stuff and had fun with it, but this is not that point in his career. He's out there making like Finding Forrester around this time. He is being very selective on his projects and will retire just a few years after Snatch comes out. He is nearing the end of his career, and he wants to be pampered. He wants everyone to recognize that he's Sean Connery. And this was a guerrilla style film. I mean, heck, they couldn't even get all their tripods that worked. One tripod was broken. Sean Connery would not have done well, I don't think, in this particular.
No, I mean, even Brad Pitt, from what I read, that they joked about that the caravan that he actually lived in during the filming was not great. It was pretty low quality, and the snacks and the food that they got for the actors was very low dollar snacks. And there's a video out there somewhere, if you find it on YouTube, where they're kind of joking about it, and Brad Pitt says they were lucky to get a potato sandwich while they're filming on the set. I can't see Sean Connery just working in that type of.
It's a low budget film. $6 million does not go as far as you think it does in making a film, even in 1999 and 2000. For the boxing scenes, they did not have enough extras to fill up the arena, not even an arena, it's like a warehouse floor that they're using there because it's unlicensed boxing. But they had to move the crowd around the ring based on what the camera was picking up and what the camera was seeing. Yeah, just not something that I think Sean Connery would have been at this point in his career. It's just not something he would have been down for. Would have been neat. Like, I think he can play that character. I think he can be menacing. Although I think he would have been a little cheeky with it, and that takes something away from the way Alan Ford did it. Because even in the moments where Alan Ford is cracking a joke, it's not funny. It's more creepy and unsettling than it is funny. And Connery is really, really charming, and I think you would laugh. You would end up loving some part of Sean Connery's Bricktop, and you don't need to do that. Like, Bricktop is not a character you need to walk away going, I really like some of that guy, though. It's too bad that he had to die. No, you need to be very happy that Bricktop got what was coming to him.
That role, Bricktop, I would agree. That role, Bricktop, Alan Ford, better than Sean Connery.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love Sean Connery, but I think so. I also want to mention, you were talking about these characters, Errol, and I'm trying to find the actor's name now. The actor that played Errol,
Andy Beckwith.
There you go. Very cool. Very cool. Very well done. I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
So, what else? Are there any other, how this might have been different?
Just the coincidence of Stephen Graham getting Tommy. I mean, he wasn't even auditioning. He wasn't even there to audition. He was there with a friend, just waiting. Right. And he was near, I guess he was outside the audition room. He was near the line, and Guy Ritchie sticks his head out and kind of recognizes Stephen Graham from something that he had done years before. We had a bit part in. So he recognizes his face, knows he's an actor, and says, "You're next." And Stephen Graham's like, No, I'm not in line. I'm not waiting. And he's like, "That's fine. Come in." And he gets him in. He's like, "Here, read." And, Stephen Graham, I guess, has dyslexia and said, "Well, I need a few moments to prepare." And Guy Ritchie gives him that, and he reads. And by that evening, it's just hours later, he puts him in a major role of Tommy.
Yeah.
So he just fell into it.
It came off to me as a very, I need an extra guy just to read. And he ends up with the part, which famously is how Harrison Ford became Han Solo.
Yeah.
That's exactly how Harrison Ford, who owes his career to Star Wars, no matter what he thinks of Star Wars, owes his life and career to Star Wars. He got the part because they needed another Han Solo to fill out the groupings that George Lucas had in mind. And so he called his buddy Harrison, who was working as a carpenter and had been in American Graffiti, but really didn't want to be in another Lucas film because he had just worked with Lucas, and called him and said, "Hey, we need you to come in. I just need one more person." And Harrison Ford is the star he is today because they could only find 4 Han Solos, and they needed a 5th. And that's how we got Harrison Ford. Stephen Graham, not near the same kind of career, but sort of the same story of, you're reading. I don't really know. Yeah, no, I need you. Come here and just read real quick. Sort of moment. So.
Yep. And as you mentioned Ford, I remember something else about Alan Ford, because he had tried out for the Bricktop role 3 times, and they still weren't sure. This was after, Sean Connery declined because they couldn't afford him, and they had their eye on someone else. I don't remember who. But Alan Ford had tried out 3 times and then came back again for another reading, but this time he forgot to put his contacts in. The previous times he went to try out, he had his contacts. This time he forgot to put his contacts in, so he had to grab his glasses, and he showed up with those thick frame glasses, And they say that when he came in and read with the glasses, Guy Ritchie immediately said, "This is Bricktop." It was all about the look. The glasses made all the difference.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes it again makes it unsettling. His eyes are bigger than the rest of his face because of what the glasses do. It just does a great job. There's a lot that people don't understand about film and the way that you tell a story. And if you can make somebody look off-putting, you think of them as the bad guy. Like they are the bad guy. Well put together, hair in every place, is the good guy, which is why heel turns for those kind of guys are great, because you never saw it coming, because he's, Prince Hans, he's all put together, and then there's a heel turn, and you're like, no, you're a good guy. I recognize good guys and bad guys. You're not a bad guy. That's why that's effective. And his eyes specifically through those real thick glasses and those big thick frames, more than any other part of his body, are just unsettling. It feels like he sees everything that happens, through walls and around corners, and that's exactly what you need. That's part of what makes him so menacing.
Yeah, agreed.
We haven't talked a lot about Benicio del Toro. I think he did a great job. There's a moment, another moment you mentioned, which did not play well to me, is when he's on the phone with Avi and he's trying on suits. You miss it if you're not paying attention, but every time it goes back to him, and I mean, it's only a sentence, a question, and then it goes back to Frankie Four Fingers. He's in a different suit. He's in a completely different getup. And again, this is very music video sort of storytelling style. Did not work on me, but I thought it was funny when I recognized it. I was like, we're doing the thing where,
Yeah, it definitely play a lot of tricks on you. And like, there's a lot of stylism in it, like you said, and it's, take it or leave it. You like it or you don't. But one thing that's really interesting, well, Frankie Four Fingers is just a funny, interesting character. There's a lot of odd things about him. But Benicio del Toro was probably at the time the second biggest name of the cast besides Brad Pitt. And another interesting thing about him and Guy Ritchie was when they did the whole scene at the beginning with the robbery. Guy Ritchie, as they're about to film the scene, he gave instruction to Benicio del Toro exactly how he wanted to act, what he wanted to do while he is performing the robbery and pointing the gun, and that whole scene where all of a sudden the movie gets very loud after the discussion about the Virgin Mary and all that.
Yes.
He tells him exactly what he wants him to do, and then Benicio del Toro proceeds to do it completely differently. like he didn't listen to a word that
Stones.
Yeah. Yes.
I love his line delivery on where Stones.
Yes. As he's beating the guy over the head.
God.
So yes. And so the story goes, he completely disregarded everything that Guy Ritchie told him, but it was so great that Ritchie was like, okay, that was better. Fine, we'll move on.
Not surprising. Not surprising at all. I'm trying to look at his so Benicio del Toro first came to my I first ran into him in Usual Suspects, where he plays a great character in Usual Suspects. Unfortunately, short-lived character in that movie as well. But I'm starting to look through. He is just taking off right as this movie is made. He's been in Fear and Loathing. He did Excess Baggage with Alicia Silverstone, which is kind of a weird movie. But he does that. He does Fear and Loathing. he does Snatch, and then all of a sudden he starts ripping stuff off. He's in Way of the Gun, which was very popular. I don't think it holds up very well, but very popular when it came out with Ryan Phillip. And then Traffic, which of course he wins an Oscar for and cements him as Benicio del Toro in a name. And then he just kind of maintains that sort of level for a while. But this is right in the midst of all that he's starting to really sort of pop off. And he's a lot of fun. I wish he was in more of it. I really do. I wish we had more of him because he is a lot of fun in this particular and cutting to the still frames of him gambling. Anytime anybody mentions the bad with Vegas. Very cool. Very cool.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about where this ranks. And I will go ahead and go first. It doesn't for me. Like it's not bad. It's not a bad movie. I don't hate it. But it's just one that doesn't do a ton for me. If I were making a list of super stylized heist movies, it might make that list, but that seems like a very weird list to make. It's not bad. I enjoy it. I just don't think I would put it on any list. In fact, I was surprised when I looked up today where it ranks on some other things. It's 112 in IMDb's top 250. And I was like, oh, it's in IMDb's top 250? That's kind of surprising. So, it doesn't do it. I don't dislike it. It's not a bad movie. I just don't think I would put it on a list, on any of my lists. Leo, you feel differently, and
I get that. Yeah,
entitled to that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it just means a lot to me, that movie, and it's just the nostalgia of it and just the times. I really enjoyed it a lot. Plus, it made me start going and looking at different things at the time, because my buddy would told me about this after I saw this movie. I was like, I gotta go see Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Went and saw that and enjoyed it. Not as good as Snatch, but still good. And then I saw Layer Cake, which is actually a really, really good movie. I like Layer Cake better than Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. And that wasn't by Guy Ritchie, but it was by the other guy I just mentioned a little while ago, Matthew Vaughn, who did Snatch with Guy Ritchie. And I gotta say, and I remember saying this to Lolis and to other friends, I said, you got to watch this movie, Layer Cake. That movie came out in 2004. And I was like, there's this guy in this movie, Daniel Craig, very little known actor. And I was like, this dude should be the next James Bond. He will be perfect for James Bond. You got to see Layer Cake. It's a great movie besides that, but watch Daniel Craig and tell me that he wouldn't be a perfect James Bond. Somebody obviously that is a lot more important and connected than me 100% agreed, because Daniel Craig became James Bond.
No, that somebody's name is Barbara Broccoli, and she's the one you have to convince that you make a good James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And it is well known that she saw Layer Cake and said, yeah, that guy fits. That guy works. Bring him in. Let's screen test him and see what we think of Daniel Craig. He got James Bond based on Layer Cake, a movie I haven't seen. But as I'm looking over now, like the top 4 on the cast, I love all of them. It's Daniel Craig, Sienna Miller, Michael Gambon, which is Dumbledore, and Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, great. Yeah. You should definitely watch it. I think there was even a box set that came out that included Snatch and Layer Cake, and it was kind of like a British mobster box set type thing.
Sure.
And those two movies were in there. And I just became a Guy Ritchie fan. I mean, I started watching more and more of his movies. His recent one, The Gentleman. It takes a lot of heat for being a little racist with some of the characters. But I mean, there's some really great performances in that movie as well. The King Arthur movie that he did, I can't think of the title right at this moment, but I really enjoyed that because it's like You take Excalibur, you take King Arthur, and you give it a Guy Ritchie spin, and it's exactly what you would expect. It's not true to the story or anything like that, but it's just kind of, fun and edgy. And I remember really enjoying that. So it just kind of set me off to kind of appreciate that genre of movie, the British underground crime movies. And
Sure.
a lot have been done after that kind of Snatch has a big influence on. I mean, Snatch is definitely a very influential movie, and you're right. There's definitely some influence there for Pulp Fiction and Quentin Tarantino. So, and I'm a big Tarantino fan, so it kind of really fits a lot of what I like, especially back in my 20s. So it's definitely my top 10.
Did you ever watch any of the Snatch television series? 20 episodes exist out there. Rupert Grint, who is Ron Weasley in the movies, in the Harry Potter movies, was part of that particular project. I've never seen any of it. Have you ever sat down and watched any of the Snatch TV?
Have not. I heard about it, but no, never watched it. I was kind of, and I still am to this day. I haven't heard too much about it, other knowing that it exists. But it's kind of like I don't want to ruin a good thing.
I understand that. I understand that. That's fair. That's fair. You do not get a lot of movies that are made into television shows that become that are good.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not able to carry over the cast. I'm thinking of really crappy versions of Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck is a great John Candy movie. They tried to make it into a sitcom. That didn't work. That didn't work at all. That's not a direction you usually have things go to get a good movie out of it. It's a good movie. I don't want to bag on it. It is a really, really well done movie. It's influential. It does a great job doing what it means to do, which is have fun. It is a movie that is meant to have fun. Whereas Shawshank, the movie we talked about 2 weeks ago, has a specific purpose, and it does that really. This movie is meant to just have fun. It's not trying to make some large, grand statement. That's not what Guy Ritchie's going for. There is something to be said. I would like to go back at some point and start looking through the movies that we've selected and the movies that we love and seeing how many of them are written and directed by the same person. Frank Darabont wrote and directed Shawshank, and so it is his vision. Guy Ritchie wrote and directed Snatch. It is his vision. It's when you start getting a whole bunch of studio input and rewrites and changes and people trying to punch things up that I wonder if it gets lost and becomes muddled. And to be fair, I told you this before we started. I have also, during the 2 weeks that we've been watching Snatch, getting ready for tonight, I have also been watching Godfather and Godfather 2. Yeah, and that's just fair. Kind of unfair to do to any movie. Is here's two of the best movies ever made, and I'm watching them at the same time that I'm watching this adjacent, mobster sort of crime story. It's certainly a different vein of that, but related. They're related in some sort of very odd way in mobsters and crime. And I'm watching two of the greatest movies ever made in that vein. At the same time, I'm watching Snatch. Godfather is not stylized in any way.
No.
It is very traditional film and story making or storytelling and filmmaking. Whereas Guy Ritchie is the other end of that spectrum in this stylized sort of way. So it's really not fair in a way that I did what I'm doing to Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. Different animals. Completely.
Very, very. And I don't think I was thinking through our list. I did not look at our list. We did put The Godfather on our list. We're not doing it this season. But we put The Godfather on here, but not Godfather 2.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a miss. That's a miss. Like,
yeah.
I've come down. I've been watching and thinking about and really critiquing and being critical of Godfather in my brain for the past couple of weeks. And Godfather is good. I think Godfather 2 is better.
Better. Yeah.
It's a better movie, but it's not as rewatchable. I think Godfather is the one that we watch over and over because it's easy to watch over and over. You really have to stay engaged with Godfather 2, with the time shifts and the two stories, and all of those things. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with Godfather and Godfather 2, because you're like, I've never seen those, shame on you. My wife, who I met at Blockbuster, I told her I was watching Godfather 2 on the plane because I had downloaded it to my iPad to watch it on the plane when we took a vacation. She goes, I've never seen any of the Godfather movies. Are you kidding me?
Like, what?
Are you kidding me? But then this is a lady. I love my wife. I will always love my wife. That's what we're supposed to do, and I do it. But she thinks Citizen Kane is boring. So we have different thoughts on film, on movies, because Citizen Kane is only boring because everything they do in Citizen Kane has been copied over and over and over for the past 80 years. And you're like, it's boring because I've seen it before. Yeah, you've seen it because everybody's ripped it for 80 years and done the same stuff. That's why you think it's boring. It's because everybody redid it. So we got 2 more weeks. I got to look at a calendar and see when we're getting to. We're getting into December already. Can you believe we're getting into December already?
Yeah, time is just blowing by.
We should be together again on December 3rd. And I'm really excited about our next movie. I am really, really excited about our next movie. I'm so excited that I may have to go home and get my Shine Box. I'm really excited about our next movie. That our next movie taught me things like you never rat on your friends. You always keep your mouth shut. It is probably one of my favorite movies. I think it would be in my top 5.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It is just an incredible movie, but famously, I think that it is a favorite of a lot of people because they don't understand what it's trying to say. I love it for what it's saying, but I think a lot of people, there are movies out there. This movie that I'm thinking of is one of them. A movie that we brought up earlier, Fight Club, is one of these movies. The Joker was one of these movies that people love it and think it's saying one thing and it's saying something completely different. And I don't think people recognize that with the movie that we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks, or with the Joker, or with what other one did I mention? Fight Club. They are not saying what a lot of people who love. That's my favorite movie. It's their favorite movie because they idolize Tyler Durden or Arthur in the Joker, or some of the characters in the movie that we're going to be covering in 2 weeks. And that's the opposite of the point. If you watch Fight Club and you're like, I want to be like Tyler Durden, you've missed the point of the movie.
You missed the point of the movie.
If you watch, if you're one of those people that watched Joker a few years ago and you were like, that guy's awesome, he's a hero, you missed the point. That wasn't and that's what Todd Phillips kind of did with the sequel, I think, is made the people that felt that way feel really bad about themselves. And that's why those people don't like the sequel to the Joker.
So, it's funny you say that because, and I'm not giving anything away, but I'm excited about this next movie as well. So much so that I already watched it in the last couple of days. I already watched it. And Loli's watched it with me. And, at the end of the movie, she was upset. She was upset because you don't want you don't want bad things to happen when you kind of become enamored with a character.
Right.
And you forget about your points, what you're saying now. You just kind of forget about that. Because you want to be that person, or you can relate with that person when you really shouldn't.
Right. Right. The movie I can't wait to talk about the next movie we do, because so many people's gripe on the movie is, oh, it's a great movie except the last 20 minutes. I won't even watch the last 20 minutes. And like, then you miss the point. The point of the whole movie is the last 20 minutes and what it says. Like, that's what these people are trying to tell you with this piece of art, is that that's what happens. All of this leads to that. I'm very excited to talk about it. I love it. It's a great movie. It's very quotable. It's very fun. And it says something, but I think what it says is not the message that a lot of people walk away with it. My roommate in college that I was talking about with Snatch is the one that showed me this movie for the first time. And he was one of those people that would not watch the last 15 or 20 minutes of it, because he's like, there's no point. The good stuff's already happened. And like that, that blows my mind. That's not the point. The point of the movie is the last few minutes and how all of that resolves. So we'll talk more about that in 2 weeks on December 3rd. Anything else about Snatch, Leo?
No, that about wraps it up. You know, one of my favorite movies. Did a lot for me in my young 20s and kind of had an impression on me. It's a good movie. Yeah.
We had a conversation before we went on that if I had encountered this movie at 40, I don't think I'd like it. But I encountered this movie when I was 21, and I was a different person when I was 21. And now the nostalgia, because there's so much that the nostalgia carries you through. I hate, and that's a strong word for me, but I'm using it. I hate Mary Poppins. Can't stand it. Don't like it. Think it's just a waste of time. Don't like Mary Poppins. I never watched it as a kid. I only watched it when my girls were kids, when I was an adult. The nostalgia does not exist for me with Mary Poppins, and so I don't like it because it's not meant for me. And I think that would be the case with Snatch. See, Snatch is just like Mary Poppins, is what I'm saying. They're obviously two.
Don't make that connection. I can't make that connection in my brain. Sorry.
Two very. They're just alike. They're exactly alike. Mary Poppins.
Exactly alike. They're both supercalifragilistic.
I think the nostalgia. I think even for you, the nostalgia of what Snatch was at a certain point in your life carries you a lot further than the movie itself carries you.
That's fair. That's fair. But it's a great movie. It is. It's not going to be in most people's top movie. 5 or top 10. No. You know, and I get that. I understand that completely. I mean, it's not at the level, anywhere near the level of like a Shawshank Redemption, as far as taking an outstanding film and presenting it and saying, this is, you know, the ultimate example.
No. And it is definitely the best of the music video sort of style movies. Charlie's Angels and Halo are both terrible movies. They are made as a 2-hour-long music video because that's who made those movies, and they are awful. They were really, really popular at the time. I'm not going to lie. They were other movies that I bought as soon as they came out. Charlie's Angels, not Halo, the first one. But when you go back and watch them now, they're almost unwatchable because it's just a 2-hour-long music video, and it's not done well. At least this was done well. This used a lot of that aesthetic, but it's done well. So
I'm gonna, since you said that, I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit. Charlie's Angels, literally the only reason why I wanted to watch that movie and watched it, you know, more than once, was because of Lucy Liu, and I was a big Lucy Liu fan when I was a younger guy. Well, I'm still a Lucy Liu fan. I love Lucy Liu. I think she's amazing, and she was very attractive woman. Lois
all
likes
power
to
to you.
give me a hard time.
Lucy Liu's great, but Cameron Diaz was all about the Cameron Diaz for me.
I get that too. I get it.
And
something about Mary.
Something about Mary. Just an incredibly beautiful actress. She was really funny, very talented. Just really enjoyed her. There was, if you remember, when you used to go into Blockbusters, they would have this wall, usually up over the new releases, and it would have like 3 gigantic panels, and they would take the movie poster and blow it up into this 3 huge panel thing. So we would get those, and then when the movie was done, we had to get rid of them. And I had the ladies from Charlie's Angels on the wall in my apartment when my wife and I met. She brings it up all the time. Big, huge, oversized 3 panels, Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu. Because I got it for nothing. And it was an oversized thing, and it hung in my bedroom, and I thought that was very, very cool. It's not very, very cool, but I thought it was at the time because it was a 20-year-old guy. And it had pretty women in it, and that's all you needed to get 20-year-old Phillip's attention into the movie. And got it in spades. So
I can relate. But on Lucy Liu, and I this is another movie that I wish I'd put on this list. But if we do another round of this, I'm definitely gonna put it in there, and see if I can get it selected as one. But with Lucy Liu and Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman, and it's in the vein of these kind of like underground crime movies, with a twist in the plot, and I think you would enjoy it. Lucky Number 11.
Never seen it.
Excellent movie. Amazing movie. Yeah. I can't believe I didn't think of this when we came up with our list. But that's another one.
Big fan of Bruce Willis. Big fan of Morgan Freeman. So one I should watch. But I've never seen the Lucky Number 11. So, well, we will be back with everybody on December 3rd with a great movie. Just a great movie. Like a great movie. James Palmer says Lucky Number 11 is a great movie.
Yes, it is.
I'll have to give it a watch. Once I do I watch Leo? Do I watch Godfather 3?
I mean, you got some time to kill.
I've seen it, but we all know what it is, and it's just not. It's not the movie it should be. There's no Tom Hagen. There's the Sofia Coppola stuff that drives everybody insane. It's made about 10 years past when it should have been made. And Robert Duvall not being in. No Tom Hagen really is just. It doesn't make sense. It's almost not a movie in that universe without Tom Hagen to me. Tom Hagen is so much of what 1 and 2 are.
There's lots of movie trilogies, and you hear about people getting together to watch the trilogies, the original Star Wars trilogy,
sure.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy, and there's a number of trilogies out there, and I don't know if I ever heard of anybody getting together and watching Godfather 1, 2, and 3. And I think there's a reason for that.
Right. I agree.
Yep.
There are a couple of really good moments in 3, but not near what the first 2 movies contain. And I don't know. Like I say, Robert Duvall, he wanted $5 million. Robert Duvall wanted $5 million to return as Tom Hagen, and they wouldn't give him that. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it. Why? $5 million added to your budget on a movie that size is not. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. On that, I just don't understand. Tom Hagen should have been in 3. Sofia Coppola should not have been in 3. I think these are all things we can agree on. All right. Well, we'll end there. And we will move forward into December 3rd and into another great, great movie. So with all that being said, remember, life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. Go home and get your shine box.